Okay, everyone, so we are going to just jump right into creating our music poster inside of Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce you guys to the software, show you what it's like when you open it up, and kind of just go from there. And then we're going to take our ideas that we had sketched out previously last week, and I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use to implement those ideas into like a final project, right? So let's first go ahead and go through the actual assignment here in Canvas first, and then we will hop into Photoshop. So the first thing, the link, I will put the link in for this lecture once it is complete. But this video is going to cover like the fundamental techniques that you're going to need to know for this project. The project competency, what kind of stuff are you going to know when you're done? You're going to be able to navigate the basics of Photoshop interface and the workspace as well. You're going to be able to create and use layer masks using non-destructive editing. What is non-destructive editing? It means that we are not really changing the original file. We're kind of making things and adjustments around so that we're not deleting information, and we're leaving that information there, but we're just hiding it or changing it in some way, right? We're just adjusting the way the data is so the image looks a certain way. We're going to work using some filters. We're going to be adding text and text layers using specific typography, and we're going to design our poster with like a balanced composition. Of course, that's going to be helpful based on the last project. And then you guys are going to learn how to export that image in order to submit it here and also wherever else I have you guys do. You're going to submit two things. You're actually going to submit the final image and then the project file as well, so the Photoshop file. I will show you how to do that stuff towards the end of this video. Project overview. So a majority, in fact, all of the images that I used and all of the assets that I took were from Adobe Stock. So I want you guys to be using Adobe Stock as your website here. Just go ahead and click this link. You should get, when you open Adobe Stock, you should be greeted with a web page that looks like the following. And if you are signed in to your Adobe account on here, if you click up in this upper right corner, usually it will tell you about your, it's a little frozen at the moment, I think, but it will usually tell you information about your account and how many assets that you're allowed to download at one time. Thankfully, actually, with the student account, you're now able to, oh, they had to get an update going on here, which is cool because you can kind of go from one to the other from here. Let's see here. Yes, if I click on this little icon right there in the upper right, it will tell me that I have my available stock quota is unlimited images. Okay. Generative AI, there are limited credits here, so you can use that, but don't you, I mean, I don't know if this is per person or not, but just check that. If your number here is different than my number, then I have been using that, and so I believe it should be based on your own. I don't think that it's like cumulative for the school. That would make no sense. But yeah, we actually get unlimited images. We do not get videos. If you try to go to videos and pick a video, or some templates we don't get, and I don't know about audio, but if you try and go to those, it'll say something about paying. But if you go to images, let's say we go to image home, and I click on this right here, you will find an image that you want to use. I'll just click on one, random one. to open it up, hopefully. I don't know why that website's acting a little funny for me, but what you do is you select download, and the image will download up. Usually it goes into your downloads folder under Microsoft, depending on where you have it navigate to. And also you'll see like a little download icon here, a little arrow pointing down that will show where the item is being downloaded to, so you can click on that little icon up here in your web browser, and you should be able to see where that download went. But usually it will end up going to, if you open your File Explorer, it usually will go to your Downloads folder right here. Let's see. You can download both JPEGs and vector files. You can, so image files, PNGs, things like that, and then also with the vector files would be like SVGs and EPS. How will you know what they are? Let's go to images, and let's go to vectors. And so this way you can tell. And let's say I'm going to click on this one. Let's say I wanted to download this. I would look over here to the right, and you can see what kind of file types they are. AI or EPS, right? Adobe Illustrator, or the vector file for print, or you could download it as a JPEG. I always recommend that people download them as an Illustrator file or an EPS, depending on what you need it for. If I were to click this, sometimes what happens is it will automatically download, but if you click this little button here, this little right next to the download file type, it'll tell you which one it's automatically going to download as, because you get a choice. Usually it will ask you like how you want to set it, and if you click this little settings button, you can say ask me every time, and that way it will ask you which version. In fact, I will have that. So that now if I were to re-download it, it might ask me, oh, do I want the JPEG? Yes, I do. So that is how you go through and you download and you see what type of images there are here. You can also see another big thing is when looking through photographs and different assets. Let's go ahead and click on this right here. You will see things that are AI generated, right? So it will say AI in the bottom left corner of the image when you hover over it. That way you know it is AI generated. You can usually see all of these are, I believe, AI. Yes, except for this one, maybe, is not an AI generated image. But the cool thing here is that it tells you the dimensions. So you're going to be downloading some larger images, right? Some higher resolution images here. So when you're searching, you can go through, and from the main page, you can go, like for instance, for mine, we were doing a metal, I'm doing a metal poster, music poster, right? So I was looking up skulls, and I would hit enter, and it's going to bring up a lot of different options. It's going to bring up not only image ones, but also like vector files and just illustrative files as well, because although these look real, I think they might be, I don't know if they are illustrated. But the cool thing over here, you can go to filters and you can just use these to categorize what you want to see, right? And I could download them based on that, right? And so I've already gone through and I've done all this work. I've already gone through and found a handful of files that I want to use for this project, or that I might potentially use for this project. How did I determine what kind of files I wanted? Using the sketches that I made from last week, right? Being able to look at this and be like, okay, I need something that looks like this, like some kind of specific font that looks like this, maybe some imagery that looks a certain way, and I downloaded them. And then what did I do after that? I organized the files. Organizing is the biggest thing to do when setting up a project, right? So I had taken that template folder right here that I have given to you guys, and I had unzipped the folder. So it will show that it's unzipped when it's just a regular folder, but if it has a little zipper on it, it is a compressed folder. And how you will undo that is you will see up at the top it will say extract all right up here in your toolbar, and you'll click on that, and then it will extract and uncompress everything from that zipped area and open it up. And when you open it up, you see set up like this. If I go, what I did is I brought that file into here, and then I renamed that file to O1 for Project 1 Photoshop Lesson Music Poster or Movie Poster, depending on what you're going to do. And then in here, I have my assets. So everything's all in order the way I have it for you guys. The only change here, I apologize for my dog. One moment, let me make sure she quiets down. Okay, I apologize about that, you guys. Hopefully you didn't hear me yelling at her to be quiet. But, where was I? Here in the file. The only change that I made here is I added a new folder called Ideas, right? Where I had taken some screenshots of some of those images that I liked while I was creating them, and I put them in a new folder. Now I wanted that folder up at the top, so all I did is added an extra 0 there, and that just puts that folder right up at the top there. If you want to add any new folders, you can right click within the empty space here, and you go to New, and then you can select folder, or there's a handy dandy little button up here that you can add folders in. And so what I did is inside here I have screenshots of imagery that I liked. I didn't go too overboard with this because I wanted to kind of stick to very specific. I didn't want to go too crazy and have too many ideas in that area. The other thing that I put in files in were the downloaded assets file. Why? Because I started downloading stuff from Adobe, and I placed a bunch of things within this images file. So it's all nested, right? So within the downloaded assets file is this images folder. I click on that, and then I have further gone and added more files in here. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I like to do that so I can easily access imagery if I need to, right? So I've got lots of skulls here that I can work with. Also some textures here that I know I want to use in this as well. So if I go out of here and I go back to this downloaded assets folder, I also have vector files. So I have different fonts I could work with if I wanted to, logos, different illustrations that are in Illustrator files, right? These are vector, and also any kind of like SVGs or EPS files would be in here as well, and then some skulls that I had found on there. Will I use all of these? No, but since I have unlimited downloads for the assets, I figured I might as well download more than what I needed, and if I use it, I use it. If I do not, I don't. So word to the wise there. Now I highly recommend that you guys create a folder like this, because it is going to help you in the long run when it comes to file and project management. And then let's say you guys are going to be turning in your project file to me at the end of this class. Well, I need any kind of images also that are attached to that project file, right? So any of the photos that you bring in to this project, anything that you're using inside of here, we're going to work non-destructively. And so when we're importing those images, we want to make sure that there's like a link between the project file and where those images are. And so when you guys are turning those into me, they will have to be attached as well. So the first thing I have here, I do have a Photoshop document already made. If we open up Photoshop here, which I already have open, you're going to see that I have a, like the project already started, right? It's not finished. There still needs to be more added onto here, but this is kind of what you're going to be working in. And when you first open Photoshop, let me close this, you will see this layout. You won't see all this stuff here. This is stuff that I've worked on in the past. Unless you've worked in Photoshop, you will not see these things. Instead, it might just be blank, or it might just have like suggested stuff for you here. But the first thing that we want to do is we want to go up to New File. You're going to see all of this stuff right here. I don't usually actually work too much in this area, and I don't usually go up to the top toolbar when doing this. I just usually click New File here. And what will happen is this New Document section will pop up for you to create your document, right? Opening the folder and creating a new file. And so there, if you look at the top right away, there are a handful of different pre-made options here. So we're right now, it defaults you into your Recents tab, so you guys might not have any of this. Any kind of saved templates that you have made for specific sized images or documents. If you're working with photos, if you're working for print, if you're doing art or illustration, web, mobile, or film and video. So there's different aspect ratios, right? And different pixel differences in sizes and, excuse me, different DPI and PPI and pixel depths and things like that. So usually what I will do is, let's say, because we're doing an art and illustration image, I usually go to art and illustration, right? We're making a poster, and I like to select the poster default here that's already made. This is going to be your easiest bet, but in case you just want to customize it and do it really quickly, you can always type in the dimensions that you want here in either inches, or you can change this option here under the presets to different types of measurements, right? So you could be doing pixels. If you did pixels, it would be 5,400 pixels by 7,200. If you wanted to do it in inches, it's 18 inches by 24 inches. So those are the dimensions that we're going to be working in. You can just click here and type things in, right? So it doesn't matter what it is. But before you hit enter or create, you want to make sure you have everything filled out here correctly. Orientation is whether you want your image to be vertical or if you want it to be horizontal. For a poster, posters are, a majority of them are vertical. So they're in portrait mode, right? Vertical is portrait. Horizontal mode is landscape mode, right? So, but for this project, we're going to be working in a vertical orientation or a portrait orientation, so you want to click that. We're not going to be using separate artboards. Artboards is like if you had an easel in front of you and you wanted more easels in front of you, or you have one artboard equals one piece of paper and another artboard equals another piece of paper. We're probably not going to be using artboards, right? We're definitely not going to be using them for this project, maybe a little bit later in the semester. But for this project, we don't really have to worry about that. So just make sure that is unmarked. And you definitely want to have the resolution to be 300. We are going to be creating this for a screen, but in case you ever want to print it, you will want to have that in 300. If you are going to print it, I recommend changing the color mode here to CMYK. If you do not want to print this, you can keep it at RGB. I'm not going to dock you if you're using it either way, but let's say if you did want to print it, you would want to put it in CMYK color mode. Remember, this is a subtractive color, right? Because we are taking away light. And the C is for cyan, magenta, yellow, and K is for key or black, right? So I'm going to keep mine in CMYK mode just because who knows if I want to print this or not. And the rest of this you don't really have to worry about. The square pixels, I always leave it like that. The 8-bit or 16-bit, this will change your file size quite a bit. So just make sure for now we're working in 8-bit here. And you are going to want to hit create. So once this, usually that won't be selected. Once you hit create, you're going to see a document right here. Now this is your essentially artboard. Everything in the gray area, yours might look light gray, mine is dark gray because I have the preferences in my Adobe software set to dark mode. And so yours might be lighter or more of a mid-tone gray, but either way, this outside area is essentially what is not on your image, right? This is like your desk. This whole white area right here, this is your piece of paper. And so we want to work within this area and within these bounds here. In Photoshop, you do not get to utilize the desktop area, right? You can't bring assets off to the side and leave them over there and expect them to be there and show up here. They will not do that. So for example, if I create, let me just color here, create this, and I want to select an area and move this. Let me convert that to our normal layer. Yes, all of a sudden see how if I converted this to a normal layer and I start to move this off screen, this is off screen. So when I click here and I deselect, you just won't be able to see it as it off screen of your or off the actual canvas itself, right? So just keep that in mind when you guys are working. You will see these little lines pop up as I move this item around or this object around. What these are is an alignment tool, right? It tells you when you are perfectly centered, either vertically or horizontally. When you're perfectly centered in the entire composition, it will look like crosshairs. But when you're off right here, you can see that it is, right now it is just centered vertically, and now it is centered horizontally, right? Horizontally, vertically. And so you can utilize this when placing your objects within Photoshop or any type of Illustrator program. If you don't see that, what you can do is you can go up here to Window and scroll down. Where is it? Let's see here. Actually, it might be under Preferences. In general, so go to Edit, Preferences, up to General, and usually within General is where I like to start working. And now I'm going to look down here through the options to this left area, and I'm probably going to go to Grids and Lines or Units and Rulers. Likely I'm going to Grids and Lines. Let's see here. Smart Guides are what it's called. So my Smart Guides are the magenta color, which is great. How do you turn Smart Guides on? You would go to Windows, and I thought it's under here. It is under View. I apologize, not Windows. So if you go to View, up here on your toolbar, up this an area is your main toolbar, right? This is going to be where you can find all sorts of options, and it's going to be very dense right away, so I don't want you guys to be overwhelmed with all of the stuff that you're going to be seeing in here, because there's multiple toolbars, right? I have a toolbar up at the top here, but I also have a toolbar right here, and there's a toolbar over here on this side. So I want you guys to know that this is it's a very in-depth software, and we're not going to be working through all of this software here in this project or throughout this class, but this is going to be a general introduction to some of these tools. And if you want those, you will click Snap to, right, or Snap, and that will allow you to snap to grids and guidelines. Also, if you go under Snap to, you can put guides, layers, document balance, that kind of stuff. So it will allow you to snap to different things. And then if you have color blindness, which is more common than not, you can go here and change your smart guide color, which is nice, and that's under your preferences. And units and rulers, I would not mess around with this really much beyond this, right? And you'll hit OK to confirm that. And then we are working with something here, right? So I'm going to, when you come into Photoshop, either you will have a transparent background like this. How do we know it's transparent? Again, this checkerboard pattern right there, right? If you come into Photoshop and you have this white area right here that I have so wonderfully colored red with a paintbrush, you can delete this, right? When it is its own separate layer. What are layers? Let's go ahead and look at that real quick. We're going to start, I think, let's start from this bottom right corner over here. We'll talk about layers and things of the sort right around here, and then we'll kind of move around. So layers are essentially what you want to work in within all of your digital programs, because it allows you to put separate objects and items on each, like a separate tab, right? And the reason we want to do that is because then we have more control over that object and what we want to do with it without affecting any of our other assets or objects that we've already gotten to a point where we like them, right? So it's this non-destructive way of creating a project here, which is going to be so beneficial to you guys in the future. When you combine everything onto one layer, then separating these objects, if you ever have to later, becomes a very big issue, and it becomes even more work than you want to put in. And so remembering to add new layers when you add new objects into here is very important. And we're going to be doing this throughout the semester in all of our software. So I want you guys to really remember, make a new layer for every new object. When you're looking over here, the layers will stack above on top of each other. So if I were to click down here on this little plus icon right here, it would add a new blank layer onto there. This is a way to group objects, and these are going to be some photo editing options here. But let's say I didn't like this background here and I wanted to delete it. Let's see if I can do so. Remove background. Oh, wonderful. It worked like that. Let's see if we can delete this actual layer. I guess we can't. We have to have another layer in order to delete one. So what I did there is, because you unfortunately you can't delete a layer without another layer present. So what I had to do is I just had to push this little button here to create a new layer so that I could get rid of the previous one. Now when you're looking at this and sorry, I want to get rid of that little pen mark. I want to kind of go through some of the different layer like options within the layer. These are going to be your different layer modes. So you can change layer modes to change the way an image looks. And we're going to get more into this in a little bit later. But for right now, I just want you to understand that this is like your layer style, right? Kind of like adding a filter. It's not a filter, but it's like changing the it's changing like alpha channels and whatnot within this. So we'll look at this in a little bit. The opacity of your layer is right here, right? So if I want some of the bottom layers to show through the top object that I'm working with, I can change the opacity. The fill is a little bit different. I don't use the fill as much, but how I believe it has to do with the pixel fills. I can look that up here in a little bit because I'm not 100%. I don't want to tell you what exactly that is without knowing. Let's see here. Let's find out. Let me show you guys how you find out something within a software like this. If you hit Control F on your keyboard in these Adobe softwares, it will come up with a Discover page, basically like your Find tool or your search bar. And so if I hit Fill, or if I start typing in Fill, I can see the different options within Photoshop here. So there's Paint Bucket tool, Fill Edit, generative fills, AI generative fill, and generative fill Photoshop. I think I'm going to go to fill right here. And it looks like this has to do with some kind of patterns, the blending modes, so on and so forth here. So usually I just stick with the opacity. That's what I'm going to tell you guys to do. If we were to, we can maybe mess around with this a little bit later and see what we can do with that. Right here are going to be there's some other tool options here. I usually will only use the tool lock or the layer lock icon, right? So this, I believe, locks your alpha channel or your mask. This, I don't know if this locks like your tool brush or your paintbrush. This is going to be selections, artboards, and the actual lock layer. So if a layer is locked, you cannot do anything within that layer. Let's say I have, let me draw a square here. Let me fill that. I filled it with a pattern here. Let's deselect. So I have this patterned object here. Let's say I lock this layer and I can no longer grab onto that object, right? So that's like, I've got this layer finalized. I really don't want to work with it anymore. Let's go ahead and lock that layer. This is good if you have a lot of layers overlapping each other and you want to make sure you're not grabbing the same like object or something over and over and over again. How shall I delete this object? I drag that down. Let's create a new layer. Delete that here. Notice what happens with every new layer. You get a new layer name here. You will want to make sure that you're labeling your layers appropriately, right? We want to change these names so that they're not layer 2, layer 5, layer 17 or something like that. Because if we're handing this project off to someone and they're trying to look through it, you want them to easily be able to identify where they need to go within the file, right? Which layer they might need to access, because they might need to hide layers, right? We hide layers by clicking this little eyeball button right next to the layer. And this allows us to hide or show something within the composition. Let's say we want like part of it to have certain text and some to have no text at all. You can hide the text layer, right? So that's very awesome, like a cool non-destructive way you can like compare and contrast different layers. If you wanted to have, you had two different styles, you couldn't decide on what you wanted, you can use this hide layer little option in order to kind of hide what you want to see and what you don't want to see. Now moving up to the area up at the top here, let's see. These are different properties of your document. There are also adjustments here. We'll work within that. We likely won't work within the Libraries tab. The Align and Distribute. So this is going to align objects to either each other if they're selected together or to the actual canvas or artboard itself, right? So there's different types of alignment. There's a little extended menu button right here that you can click and see the different types of alignment and distribution options. Right now these ones say align, so these are going to align your objects to certain parts of the board right here. So if I did have that square, let's say I had that shape. Let's fill that with the paint bucket tool. And that shape, let's say I wanted to line it up to this side of my canvas there. If I come over here to the Align tab and I click this button right here, that's going to align that object. It should align it right over to here, but it didn't. Let's see. Maybe the Align and Distribute, maybe if I have to deselect this. Let's see here. Ah, no, it doesn't work like that. I wonder if it works with two separate. I'm more comfortable working inside of, I usually work with vector items more than using Photoshop. But let's see if we can figure this one out. Let's fill this area right here. Let's say we wanted to select both of these objects. Let's grab them both. Or if we can grab, let's deselect. Grab both of these. Maybe this one is on a new layer. If I wanted to copy this layer and paste it, I could drag this layer down to the plus icon, and it will duplicate the layer, which is neat. So I can select, maybe I want to, on this layer, on this top layer, when I want to choose a different layer, sorry, let me do this again. Here we go. When I want to work on a specific layer, you have to make sure that you're selecting that layer and highlighting it, right? So let's say I only wanted to work on this top layer. I have to select that layer and I have to highlight it. Now, if I were to grab both of these and then hit Align, I believe that is when they will align these objects. Let me see if I can move it this way. Select that, click Align, and it aligns them based on what you have selected on separate layers. Okay, so the alignment only works and the distribution only works when they are on separate layers with different objects selected. And you're going to select that, and then you'll hit whatever alignment you want, and it will align them to each other, those objects within these separate layers. So let's say that, let's delete, I don't know if I can, there we go. So delete, if you want to delete something, you have to use backspace. You can't use the delete button. And it did work for that top layer there, but the copy that I made, it kept this one here. It won't delete it unless I, of course, make another layer. So that's kind of like a little insight into this area right here. If we are looking right over here, we can pick different colors. We have our color chart. Right here we have our different hues. And here we have our different values and our saturation, right? So if we want it darker or lighter, or more desaturated or more saturated, because least saturated is going to be black. Most saturated is going to be the color that is the strongest. So that's the highest saturation. Down here in the lower left is the lowest saturation, and your values on whether how bright you want it is up, and across is how dark you want that, like the saturation value. So it's like a little chart. So if I wanted to come over here and start picking colors, I can just click my mouse and drag over here and pick like the higher saturation. And if I want to change the hue, I can just drag this little arrow or my mouse, click and drag up and down, and you can pick your colors that you want. You can also select your colors over here in the swatch area, the current color that you have selected. By default, it is black and white, which is this little button right here. So if you ever get out of place and you want to go back to pure black or white, you can just click this little icon, this tiny little one right there, and it will change this to black and white. Let's say the color in the front is always your active color, the color in the back is always like your secondary inactive color. So if you want to switch them, you just can click this little button here. I believe to switch them, you can also hit X is the shortcut to switch those on your computer, and it will switch from the front to the back color here, right? So if I picked a different color, let's say I picked a red, and I switched to the back color, and then I picked a green, looky there, I'm ready for Christmas, and I can switch back and forth and choose whatever colors I'm working in. I'm going to jump back to the default here. When we see really over here, back to going over here, you might not use swatches, you could use gradients. Gradients are another option where you can go, you can click this little tab over here and you can drop down and see some basic gradients. When looking at gradients, if it goes from a solid color to another solid color, so we have black here and then white here, then it will be fully opaque, right, all the way through. It's going to be black up here and white down here. If you see it more like this, where it's black right here in this checkerboard, that is the transparency channel, right? So it is going to be dark up at the top or wherever you start your gradient, and then at the bottom it's going to be see-through or transparent. And then here's like a partially transparent gradient as well, and maybe has like less of a feathered gradient right there. There's different colors that you can look at as well. There's a lot of different things in here. If you need to, because optimizing screen space is very important, if you need to change the size of any of these tabs, you can hover your mouse over areas like that or this, and you will see a double-sided arrow show up, and you can click and drag, and it will allow you to extend those areas. Same here, right? Let's say we wanted more workspace or less workspace, we could, choose one or the other, where we wanted to go and how big we wanted to make this area based on what fits, what kind of things suit our needs. So remember, just hovering over those spots and clicking and dragging, and you can see much more areas. You can scroll. There's little scroll wheels on the side here. These get very in-depth. Let's say I wanted to use this. It automatically filled in my objects here with a gradient. Let's see if I wanted to change this gradient. If I double click on this gradient here, let's see if it will let me create a new one. These are basics. Let's kind of close this right here. Iridescent. Let's choose that one. This will be a cool one because there's a lot of different colored bands in this one that I've picked right here, and so you can see the what's cool about this is that when I clicked on the gradient, let me show you here, in the layers panel, let me bring this up, you can see that it automatically created a new layer here, and this layer has a tiny little arrow that goes down, and it's almost like the layer is indented, right? The gradient object is indented in. This means that this is an alpha channel. What the alpha channel, it's kind of like masking, right? When I was showing you guys earlier in the last video, almost like if you were to cut a circle out of a piece of paper and hold it over a picture over the part you want to be seen, and then all the paper part would essentially make the rest of the picture go away, and you can control what is being seen, right? That's what masking is. This alpha lock allows you to take anything that's on this layer and essentially mask it, use the layer below it as a mask, right? So these squares that I had made became the mask, right? The little cutouts for this gradient. So the cool thing is if I click this gradient and I want to move it around, I can do so, I believe. Let's see here. Let's see if I can move this. I can change, if I double click on the gradient down here in the layer, I can change the colors. You can also do that over here in this panel. You can change the style of your gradient that you want. If you want like a, if you want like a linear gradient or radial gradient, so this is more of a vertical and horizontal gradient, like some kind of star-shaped one. You can change the angles and the scales, so you can work a little bit more and get a lot of control over your options here within your properties tab, which is really neat. You can, okay, let's see, let's say this is how I liked it, but you can also, which is neat, is you will see a little menu down here, which is essentially a mini properties tab. And so you can go here and have little shortcuts to change a color, change a gradient type. You can reverse your gradient. So like if I wanted it swapped, if I wanted the dark down at the bottom and the lighter up at the top, I could click this. More properties regarding the gradient. If you click on this, and then you can hide the bar and stuff. This is more for the actual little bar. You can move this too if it's in your way, or if you want it up in a different area. And this will change based on what kind of tools you have selected and what kind of objects you actually have selected as well. And if I wanted to move these squares, let's see if I can do that. If I hit Control T, which is free transform, which I can't. Let's see here. I believe I can't because of this alpha lock channel. So if I wanted to change this, if I didn't want this alpha lock, if I didn't want this gradient to be masked out within these shapes, I can hold the Alt button and you will see and hover right here in between the two layers, and what you'll see is like a little icon that looks like this with the little arrow pointing down. And if you click on that, it will turn off that alpha mask. This is essentially what non-destructive editing is, right? And so I can take this now and I can maybe move my, let's say I wanted to move this down a little bit more and adjust it. I could do that. And then if I wanted this gradient to then fill that area in, I could hold the Alt key down and I could turn that alpha lock back on, and we have it right there. I don't know if I can double click into there. I'm going to try and figure that out if I can do that for you guys. But that's just a little bit of a long way to do that. Or you can just click and drag it up or above and it will break that alpha mask as well. Let's go ahead and look over at the top. We have some additional controls. This will take you to the home where you can pick your files again and open new files. This is showing you your current tool. This toolbar will change based on what kind of tool that you have selected over from the left-hand side. And so right now, because I have the selection tool, this is going to be an important one. The selection tool will allow you to select objects here and essentially transform them, right? If I want to, transforming, first of all, let's kind of break that down. Transforming is changing an object in some way or form, right? So like maybe I wanted to scale the image up and make it bigger, or shrink the image down and make it smaller. I could use the transform tool here. I could do it if I wanted to make it skinnier, I could do it that way. If I wanted to rotate the object, I could use that, do that using the transform properties as well. And so the transform tool there is going to be your basic tool that you're going to kind of default to when you open the software. Now, when you have the transform tool selected, let me kind of lock this gradient layer so it doesn't keep showing up when I hover over, because what happens, notice that if this is unlocked, and if you want to unlock a layer, you just select that layer and you can click the little lock icon there, or you can click this little icon right here, right? So this one here, or the one that's over on the side there. But you just want to make sure you have that layer selected. Select the layer that you want, and lock it. And so now I can't grab or move that layer on accident. So let's kind of work with these transform properties and look more into these. Let's say you want to move the object, right? You can have this transform tool selected and you can move the object anywhere you would like by just clicking and dragging. You can make the object smaller or larger by hovering over either any of these little boxes around this bounding box. This bounding box essentially just encapsulates the objects that you have on the layer and allows you to adjust them, right? And so if I want to make that smaller, if I want to make that larger, I can just hover over these areas and do so. What if I don't want to, because what this is doing right now is it is scaling it based on the proportions that it's already at, right? So instead of, if I wanted to just make it skinny and not resize the height, right? Why can't I do that by just clicking and dragging like this? Because it is proportionally locked. And so what we want to do is we want to just hold down Alt and, or I'm sorry, Control, I think, or Shift. Yes, it's for this one, it's Shift. If you hold down Shift and click on these, you can change these in an unproportional or uneven way, right? So if I wanted to make it taller and have these longer rectangles, I could do that. If I wanted to make them skinnier, I'd hold Shift down and I'd click and drag that as well. But automatically it will proportionally scale your objects. If I wanted to rotate them, I just take my mouse and I hover it over one of these corners here, and I click and I drag around, and it will allow you to rotate your object. Let's say I wanted to rotate it in equal amount of degrees and snap to essentially like a degree, if we were looking at like a circle that has all the degrees on it, from 0 to 360, right? 360 degrees of a turn. I can click on this, hold Shift, and it will snap into the degree that you want. Notice how this little, right there, right by my mouse, this little information shows up and it tells you what angle you are at, right? Because these degrees are in angles. So as we rotate this, we can change the angles and do that by snapping to like essentially a grid, right? So that's a 90-degree turn. This is at 0 degrees, which would also be 180 degrees as well. And so if you guys want a little bit more guidance on that, you can always reach out to me. But the rotating, if you want to free rotate, you just click and drag. You don't have to hold down Shift or anything like that. If you want to, let's see, you can also, it looks like anywhere now that you hold it outside, you can turn caps lock off. You can rotate from anywhere, so that's pretty nice. If we want to select one object and not another object, how do we do that? That you can do using your marquee tool or your selection tool, okay? This is your selection tool. These are going to be your like quick selections that allow you to grab certain things, right? So, or this is, I'm sorry, the move tool, and these are your selection tools, your marquee tool and your selection brush. If I have an object that is very square and easy to grab, I can use one of these marquee tools. I can select that. It's got a bunch of a dashed line around it. You'll hear it called the marching ants, because if I click and drag, it's going to create like either a rectangle. If I hold down Shift, it'll make a square, and I can easily grab something like this, right? If I wanted to just grab this part of I want to make sure my layer is selected, and I want to grab this section. I just want to move this rectangle and not this one. I would grab this marquee tool, draw a selection around it. You can see that I have this here, this little arrow, which allows me to grab this selection and move it around if I wanted only part of that included. I will show you how to do that in a second. But you see these little marching ants, and I can grab this move tool now, and I can move this object separately on its own. Now this is really easy because this is just a very simple shape. It's a geometric shape, so using this square marquee tool works really well. If you click and hold, if you like long press this tool over to the side here, you will see that there's additional tools underneath. How can you tell if there's additional tools within the tool? Is these tiny little corner triangles here will show you that there's more options within this tool, right? And so if I long press and release, you will see that there's also elliptical marquee tools. So I can click and drag and create an oval. If I hold down shift, I have a circle. And let's say I wanted to move this part of this object here. I want to make sure that my layer that I want to make a change to is selected over here. I've got my selection made with the selection tool. Now I'm going to grab my move tool, and then I'm going to move this little selection out, and then all of a sudden I have a little area. I can click deselect there, and I have an area or a section kind of cut out of my rectangle here, which is really cool because this is a great way to create that negative space and stuff like that. If I long press, you can do single rows, rectangular ones. If you click here on the tool below it is more of a free form version of this tool here. So there's a selection brush tool, and what that is going to do is it's going to select pixels that are similar. It's going to kind of try and find essentially the outline of your image and select that image based on like the pixels kind of next to it. It will also allow you to kind of change what the selection ends up being. The lasso tool is going to let you kind of freehand draw that that selection. So if I wanted to go like this and have a selection that looked like this, you'll want to make sure it's obviously closed right here because the shape has to be completely closed for the selection. And it will allow me to select something like that. So let's say I have like an odd organic shape here. Let's grab the, here, let me grab a paintbrush, make that smaller, color something right here. Let's say I just wanted to select that object there. I can grab this and I can click here, and it will show me pink as I hold down, press down on my mouse, hold down and drag, and it will select, usually selects the side. Let me see here, if I click this, it's going to grab that and let me move it. Now notice it didn't get all of my item right there, and that's because it is a pixel based. If I were to zoom in super far, and you see these tiny little pixels right here, the selection didn't grab it. The value of these pixels, each one of these pixels, was a little harder for that selection to comprehend, and so it just kind of left that behind. So let's say I want to kind of get rid of that section. I could just select this lasso tool, this free lasso tool, click and drag, draw around here, make sure I close that area, and I can delete that section here. If I grab my move tool, I click on that and I can move that, and I can also delete it if I hit backspace there. So that's another option. Notice when I click off, none of these objects are separated, right? Why are they not separated? Because I am creating them all on this one layer. And so we need to, if you wanted them to be their own separate thing, like let's say I want to make a new shape, I'm going to create an additional layer, coming down here, pressing here. I'm going to create that new layer, and I am going to start to, you know, I can grab my, let's say I want to create a circle, a perfect circle. One way you can do that is you can grab that marquee tool. Let's change our colors here. All I did was clicked on this color there, and it pulled up this color picker, and so I can change the hue, and then I can click here and drag and update the color that I'd want. And if I draw a marquee, like a circle right here, holding shift, and I have my color selected that I want, you can take any kind of selection and fill it in holding shift and backspace. And what that will do is it will ask you what you want to fill that content with. I want to fill it with the foreground color. This is the foreground color, right? The first color, and your secondary color or your background color is the one behind it. So you can select which color you want to do. You can do a content aware and fill it with other stuff that you use later, or patterns, or black, or 50% gray, or white, things like that. I'm just going to hit OK here, and it has filled in this circle. Now if I hit deselect and go back to my move tool, which if you hit V on your keyboard will automatically select that move tool, I can grab this object, and it is separate from these because it is on its own separate layer. And so you can see how this is beneficial to really like being able to have a non-destructive way of creating objects. And so let's say I was creating something and I wanted this main object to be here in the center of my screen. I could grab this and adjust where I want it, right? Let's say I wanted it to hide part of this object here, or I didn't like it where it was centered up here towards the top, and maybe I wanted to bring it down to the bottom. I can do that, right? So that is the power of working in separate layers, and that's why it's really, really important to really learn to make everything on its own separate layer. I do separate text on its own separate layer. Sometimes I will do separate letters on their own separate layer. That's kind of extensive, a little bit more in depth, but you guys likely won't be doing that for this project, but as you get more experience within the software, you can. There's the polygon lasso tool will select it in like square areas, like very hard edges. So if I click here and let go and then click again, it creates, like, as I'm not holding down anything, I'm just moving my mouse, and so it allows me to click and just kind of create this polygon type lasso. And you know you're closing the selection when you see this little circle appear next to your mouse, and when you click that, it will close that like shape and essentially make your selection. Now if I go here and I hit M for move and I try and move anything, it's not moving this black square. Why is that? Again, it's because I'm not selected on the right layer. I have to select this layer here and then draw this on. I have to deselect, grab this, draw this selection now on this layer that I wanted. And then I can hit M on my keyboard for the, I'm sorry, not move, V as in move, V for the move tool, and then grab that and move that around. There are object selection tools. These are going to be very, very important when it comes to grabbing selections outside of like when you have a picture and the picture has a background and all this other stuff going on within the photo. Let's say you only want a section of that photograph, right? Because we want to, essentially it's like we're collaging right now, right? That's what we're doing. So imagine you're ripping pages out of a magazine and you only want the model from this one picture, and so you cut her out specifically, right? That's what this quick selection tools are going to do in these magic wand tools, is they're essentially going to work to select around the object that you have. These have gotten very, very advanced from just a handful of years ago, especially with the integration of AI. It has become so much better when trying to select very complex images. And so the object selection tool is going to use AI, and it's going to say, oh, this is the object or the subject that I'm supposed to be selecting. It's going to look at the overall image and see where you clicked, and it's going to be like, I need to select that object. So it's going to create an outline around it. The quick selection tool is going to be more of like a manual process of that. And the magic wand tool is kind of similar to the selection tool, but it allows you to click and drag over there, and you can select the image that way. There's a crop tool right here, or resizing tool. This is going to allow you to crop your images. I think we all know what cropping an image ends up looking like. The framing tool allows you to adjust the frames. Let's see, let's play this little video. If you notice, if you hover over these tools and you click on these things, it will tell you will
The
take
frame
you over to
tool
these
allows you to create placeholder frames,
areas.
which can later be filled with place images. This convenient tool is perfect for planning compositions, organizing your design elements, or creating mock-ups. To access the frame tool, press K on your keyboard or find it in the toolbar. Click and drag to draw a frame on the canvas. You can add an image to the frame by dragging and dropping directly into the frame. It will automatically scale to fit the frame's dimensions. Both the frame and the image inside can be selected, resized, or rotated together or separately. To select the frame or image independently, use the Move tool. Click to select the frame.
So watching those little videos is really beneficial to learning all of these tools right here, right? So again, you don't even have to click on it. You can just hover and you can go here and you can select your or play that video here. Also, if you're looking for other tools, let me select here. Let's deselect this little area and grab the Move tool. Shortcuts are going to be your friends. So if you hover over here, and you can also see that it shows your shortcut right there. Well, on your keyboard, you can press to access that tool, right? So if you find yourself going to the Move tool a lot, right, V on the keyboard is going to help you with that much quicker than being over here working and having to drag your mouse over to the toolbar and selecting it. I could go over all of these tools right now, but we're not going to use all of them. We will likely use you could use the color, let me undo that. You might use the color picker tool. The color picking tool, you will click on this tool and it will bring up the little color picker icon for your mouse, and you'll just drag it over a color that you want to pick, and you click when you want to confirm that selection, and that will take that color. It's like sampling a color, and it will add it down to your color choice or your current palette color down there at the bottom. We don't have to worry about the Band-Aid tool. We're not going to use that. The brush is going to allow you to work inside of the masks eventually, so we're going to be working in the brushes. This also is a great tool for people who want to paint in Photoshop. So Photoshop is also used for painting and not just working with photos, right? With photography, you can click and hold. There's different tools right here, but I usually use just the paintbrush, and I will add a new layer here because you have to have a layer with blank pixels in order to paint. And I have my color selected down here. Let's say I wanted to pick like this blue. If I want to select that color picker, the eyedropper, I just have to hit I on my keyboard, and you see the little eyedropper show up, and I want to get this kind of blue. I'm just going to hover over and I'm going to click there. If you click and hold, you can see the colors. That the color on the bottom is the current color that you have selected. The color on the top is the color that you would want to change it to. Notice how that changes on the as I move this eyedropper tool around. And so as soon as I release, it will select that color and it will put that color down here. So I would rather have like this cool blue color, and let's say I wanted to paint something here. If I look up at the top when I select that paintbrush tool, you notice that this toolbar changes. I can select different brushes here. I can select whether they have a hard edge or a soft edge. I don't have any brushes added in here. You can find new tool brushes and stuff online. But usually you will find them, you don't have to know tool presets, so you can add presets here if you want, but here is where you're going to select your type of brush, and in this area here, this 300 just tells you how many pixels it is, so you can change the side here, size, so if I wanted it smaller, I could change it smaller. If I wanted it much bigger, I can make it bigger. Notice how the cursor changes in size when I make it bigger versus smaller. If I did not, there's a shortcut for this. If I did not have this little menu pulled up right there, if I hold down the bracket keys on my keyboard, the little square brackets, right above the enter key, right? There's an open and closed square bracket. It allows me to change the size of my brush. So if I want a big brush, I can select the, like, make it big, and then I can make it small and color down here. In order to color, you can click and drag. If I were to go over here and change my brushes, let's say I wanted a hard-edged brush, right? Notice this is kind of soft, almost like airbrushing. This is more like if you were to use a paintbrush. And if I were to click that hard edge brush and start painting here, notice how the edge is much harder. Let's change a color to something a little darker so we can see the difference. Very hard edge versus a nice feathered soft edge here. Good for blending and stuff. Great for outlines. The hard edge is good for outlines and lining things. This is good for soft blending and whatnot. Filling in things. Look how I can make that much bigger. You can change a lot of different settings in here, and there's a lot of different types of brushes. You have dry media brushes, which are going to be like pencils and stuff. There's like different, there's a lot of different stuff when it comes to brushes. Now, brushes can be very intense on your RAM of your computer. So this, working like this with paintbrushes, unless you have a really, like a decent rig, it can slow down. Oops, I did not want to duplicate it. I wanted to delete it. It can slow down the progress on your computer, and if your computer isn't heavy enough, sometimes it can freeze your program. So just keep that in mind when like using this to draw. The cool thing is you can hook Photoshop up to things like Cintiq or a Wacom Cintiq tablet, like a drawing tablet, and you can use that and draw like it's a pen and a pencil, right? So, or pencil and paper, which is really cool using that option. There's an eraser tool here that you can, so if I had my brush tool and I was painting, and I wanted to erase some of that, I could just come in here and erase it. Again, the eraser tool is going to work the same like the brush. I can come up here and select different ones. I can change the size using the square bracket, and then I can erase those pixels that I just put down using that eraser by just clicking and kind of dragging it, right? Holding down that click. If I wanted to fill the entire layer, I could click this paint bucket tool. Notice there's the gradient tool, but let's say I wanted to fill this whole layer right here, this layer, not the actual gradient layer. Let's say I wanted to fill this with that turquoise color I had. I would just click here and it would fill that in. Let's say I had on the same layer that circle drawn and I wanted to fill it in now with this white. I could have my selection there. I'd grab my paint bucket tool, which is G. G is for girl, and I would just click there, and then all of a sudden I have a layer with this that is filled in with this color, the foreground color that I had, and the background color I have created like a circle with that, right? So, and if I wanted to erase this, right, I would just grab that eraser tool and I could go like this, and it's going to erase pixels on this layer and reveal everything underneath. The problem with this is a destructive way of working, right? Because if I did this, then I can't get that information back, right? So if I want to undo that, you can undoing and redoing. Let's talk about that real quick. You see me making these appear and disappear. If I hold Control Z for zebra and I just tap that Z with holding that control button down, it will undo your previous steps that you did with every click of your mouse, right? If I wanted to redo it, I would hit Shift Control Z and it would redo what I did there. I don't want that there because I don't want to take these pixels away. So how can I work in a non-destructive form when wanting to remove some of this? Well, I could do a layer mask on here. So what I would want to do is I want to make sure this layer is selected, and I am going to come down to this area while that layer is selected, and I'm going to select this little button right there, this little icon that is the layer mask. And what that does is it adds like this little link here to this white area. And this is essentially that page that I was telling you guys about, that you can cut images, you can cut shapes out of to reveal what's underneath, right? Well, white says everything's there. It's fully transparent. Black is going to hide things. So if I wanted to hide this circle and reveal this gradient underneath, what I could do is I could grab my paintbrush tool and I could select, making sure this only works in black and white. Okay, it does not work in any other color. And when you're wanting to do this, you want to make sure that you are selected on the layer mask specifically. So not only do you have your layer selected first, but then you have the mask here selected. How do we do that? We select the layer and then we select the mask directly. And we look over here, make sure it's black and white on our foreground and background color. We select a brush and then we come into our scene here, and then we just kind of start to color. And notice what that does is it looks like it's erasing things, right? Let's say I wanted to get, let's say I made this huge, about the size of it, and I want to just click and then make that go away, right? Guess what? This is a non-destructive format. Had I erased it from the layer directly, I would have destroyed that circle, but I didn't. Instead, what I did is I used the black on the layer mask to essentially cut a section out on this layer, right? To reveal whatever is underneath. And so if I didn't want this, I could disconnect these. I think the disconnecting of the layer mask allows you to like move this around, but I want to lock it to here. But if I wanted to change this, right, all I would have to do is switch to my background color, which is white, and I could go like this and color it in, and I all of a sudden have I have the ability to essentially hide and show what I want to be seen, right? And so I can change the size of my brush again. I can pick different brushes in here. Let's say I wanted to get this brush even, which is like, some of these are really textured looking brushes there. I could grab that brush and I could scale the size up here where you can see that, and I can just kind of click and drag and get this neat like textured look on this layer mask. And let's say I messed up the layer mask and I don't ever want to do that again. I hit that white and I can go back, or I can just come over here, select that layer mask and delete it entirely. Apply mask to layer before removing. We don't want to, we want to delete it. And so I could do that. If I wanted to now go like this, I can notice that I'm actually painting on the layer now. So if I were, it's not going to show anything underneath because it's just adding paint. It's working almost with like a subtractive color, right? So it's like just adding on top, adding the color on top, almost like using paint versus like cutting out of paper to reveal something else. Let's see here. Let's undo this. Let's delete that layer mask again. Delete that. Remember, read these warnings before they come up. Delete that mask. I don't want to apply it to the layer. If I apply it to the layer, it's going to make it permanent. It's going to make that change permanent there. Text right here. You can select text and you can come in here and you can type whatever you want. You can change the text right here. You can come down here, let's say I wanted it like that, and then I start typing like this, it will change the text. I can change the size, I can change, I can change the type, the size, I can change the color here of the text that I want. I can change the alignment of the paragraph, right, if I want to align it, center align it. Working with dynamic text is going to reshape and adjust your text and it fills the shape of the text boundary, right? So in this example, it's a box. So as they increase the size of the box, it will change the way it creates a dynamic text based on whatever's written within your text field here. If you come up here at the top and you notice that those options are also there, you can also choose whether the font weight, right? Like, do I want it italics, semi-bold, bold italic, right? You can pick those here. I highly recommend do not use italics or script fonts in this course, it will, usually it's kind of hard to read. These are specific to the style that I'm going to do of this project. So, there is, we'll be working with different text. I'll go through that once we start creating our actual project, which we'll probably do in the next course. Right now, we're just getting like an introduction into the software. If I click here on the text, you can also, let's write my name. And let's say I wanted to, you can also access all of these tools up at the top by clicking here in more options, and you can change, like, if you wanted, like if it doesn't come with a bold typeface, it doesn't give you that option, you can make it faux bold or italics here, or you can underline it. So there's options with that. Let's say I wanted to change like a style. I wanted to warp my text to make it kind of arc. I could do that. I can change to bulge, so I can change different styles of how I have my text look, which is really neat because this might be able to fit your poster a little bit more, depending on, like if I wanted this to go around the circle, I could probably pick an arc. Let's see here. I can bend it. I can change the bend of it if I don't want it to fully, like to be very close, but not quite. Probably right around 24, 25. I can manually type these in right there. I can change the horizontal distribution of things, like the distortion of them, the vertical distortion, if I want it to kind of go like this. So you can have a lot of fun with text here inside of Photoshop. You can almost get that, like, let's see here. Let's zero out this distortion. I'll just put 0. Usually 0 is like the default. Let's say I wanted to make it like very Star Wars-y, like in the beginning of Star Wars when it's like dan, 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 and the text is kind of bending. You can get that kind of effect with that vertical distortion, and you can change the type of distortion based on the graph line, right? If you want to do a horizontal or vertical arc, so you can change that here. So you guys can play around with these settings. Again, this setting is up here when you type text. And when you want to confirm that, you just click that little check mark that was right there, and it will confirm that change to your text there. And what it actually did now is it became I believe it became, no, it didn't become an object layer. It just became, it just unselected it. But when you, let's say I didn't want that anymore like that, I could always come in here and change this. So it's very like forgiving. You can come in, if you want to double click on something again to change it, you can double click and bring up those settings and make those changes. You can also check over here within the properties tab. The properties tab is going to hold all the properties for whatever tool or whatever you're working in, whatever object you have selected. Here's your shape tool, so you can get basic shapes. You can do stars, and it will fill in with your foreground color. This is going to be a lot like in Illustrator as well. Hit V to move that if I want to move that. I can come in here and get a custom shape tool where it can kind of, ooh, this one is, why is this a lion? Let's move this, or like a tiger or something. That's kind of neat. Let's see how that happened. Why was my custom shape a cat? Let's find that out. Draw shapes from a custom shape list. Where is that list? Let's find. Let us find that list. That's kind of neat. Again, hover over it. It should show you, once you have it selected, if you hover over, it should show you that video. Let's learn more about that. Alright, this is kind of neat. Some things are newer in here, which I haven't seen. How to create shapes. Draw a custom shape. Let's click on that, and it'll bring you over to like a forum over here where you can read, and you can figure out how. Okay. Select the custom shape tool from the shape tools group in the toolbar. Select the shape drop down in the options bar. Okay, let's go back there and look at that. Okay, here's your shape up here. So, shape. Oh, cool. So up here in your options bar, you can pick using a shape, like a custom shape here, which you can change right over here. Or you can change to like a free-handed one if you want to. You can fill it. You can change the stroke width, which is really cool. Change alignment and stuff, and layer orders if you want to. Ooh, nice. There's like different stuff here. Cool. Flowers. Let's check this out. Oh, so these are neat. This is something new I haven't used before. Let's see what the path. Let's see path. If I can kind of draw my own shape. Make a selection. You can make a selection probably and cut things out of it. You can make a shape itself. So like, what if I wanted, oh cool, let's say I wanted to take this shape and let's delete these, all of these objects. Delete this. If I hold down, by the way, if I hold down the space bar and I click and drag, you get this little hand tool, which is right here as well. And this allows me to just kind of move around my artboard and check things out. So I'm going to grab my move tool here. I'm going to, this is a path. Look how it created a path on this layer. So a set of vertices here where it, I could probably come in here if I had the other selection tool, if I hit A. Let's see here. If I grab this direct selection tool, and when you have paths and you grab a direct selection tool, you can grab each one of these vertices and you can change them. This is very much something that we're going to do in Illustrator, but not necessarily here. So I highly suggest not doing that. But we can go back to the path selection tool and it'll grab this whole thing. I'm going to delete this path. Turn a live shape into a regular path. No, let's hit yes, see what happens. It deleted it. Okay, delete that there. Let's say we wanted to mask one of those shapes to cut that out of the middle of the circle, right? Or let's fill this circle in first of all with the same as this blue color. So I hit X to bring that blue back to the foreground. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to bring up my paint bucket tool, making sure that I have the layer selected down here in the lower right, and I'm going to select that or click that there and fill that section in to be the same color. And now let's take that shape tool and we are going to actually come down here first and we're going to select the layer mask. We're going to select that layer and make sure the layer mask is here. And we want to change we want the foreground color to be black, and we are going to cut a shape. Let's look down here. Let's do a boat. Alright, so I have a boat selected, and I'm going to hold down Shift and click and drag. Oh, I actually want to do the actual shape here, or probably pixels, right? Let's try that one. Nice. If I do it as pixels, it automatically fills it in with the foreground color, which ends up being black. And look at that. We have a mask with this cool shape on it, right? So that is awesome. I'm curious as to how You can make your like custom shapes here. This is neat. This is a new thing. Let's see if it also works with regular shapes. Let's undo that, Control Z. Let's go to the shape path and then let's do that again. Holding down Shift and doing that. It's going to create its own layer. It's going to create a shape on its own layer, right? So if you want to do that, you'll make sure that you want to be in the shape section there. But if you want to create it as like a layer mask, right? You want to make sure you have the layer mask selected here, and make sure you change this up here to pixels. And once you have that selected, you can draw it, and it will add that essentially layer mask, right? It'll paint it, fill it in black so that it kind of cuts out that image of that layer. I do not want to enter a select mask. Cancel. You guys don't have to worry about that right now. So this is kind of like introducing you into the software. I want you guys to play around in this software today, because on Thursday you're going to have another video that's going to show you how to actually make your first project. So I want you guys to maybe, if you could, start laying out some images within here if you want to, like maybe start playing around with this and getting used to it, so that on Thursday's class we can jump in and start assembling our actual poster here. If you guys have any questions about these techniques, I'd love for you to write me and let me know so that we can go through them together, and if you have any questions I can clarify that. Don't worry about turning anything in right now for this. This is just your lesson, your first lesson for this week. I more or less want you to jump in and start playing around. I will post this one here once we start actually doing the project, which will be on Thursday's class. So I wanted to keep this around an hour, and I think it's a little over that right now. But, yeah, okay. Have any questions, let me know.